All right. Hey, welcome everyone. It's Chris Petri. Thanks for coming by. We're going to do another beautiful painting. We're doing the Extreme Beginner series here. We're going to kind of show you how you're going to do a gorgeous painting with the glazing technique. We cover all the methods and techniques you're going to need, all the steps, all the way through the whole painting to create this gorgeous street scene here. We have figures, beautiful figures. We have a beautiful green and white canopy with umbrellas, green and white umbrellas, people having coffee, lunch, a cafe, some restaurants, maybe some dinner, some breakfast. Gorgeous trees in the background leading into a different part of the painting, so you have that mystery of something beyond these beautiful cafes and restaurants here. And we have gorgeous buildings. It's the beautiful painting to do. Let's do it here. Let's get started. Main thing here is we cover right in the beginning of the video. I just want you to kind of stick with me on this. Right in the beginning of the video, we cover using mats so that when you're going to get ready and you're going to start framing your paintings, you're going to use your mat to actually draw a pencil line around the paper. When you're working on your watercolor paper, you first draw your line of the size mat you need, the window size on your painting, so that when you're done with your painting, you can just simply put your mat over your painting and you'll have a perfect perfectly framed out painting. You can put a frame around it. You put your mat on first and you put your frame. So we cover that in detail here in the beginning for the first 10 minutes or so. If you're not interested in something like that, that's fine. You can just fast forward through that. But just wanted to say that we're going to cover a lot of things in this video, but most of all, we're covering this beautiful glazing technique painting. Gorgeous street scene here. Cafes, restaurants, figures, beautiful sunny day with the blue skies. We're painting into the light, so the light's coming from the background, shining towards us. Really fun painting to do, and we'll get started in just a second. All right. Hey, this is Chris Petri again. Hey, we just saw the finished painting, so we're just going to go through a few little tidbits of information before we actually go on and do our painting here. So you saw the finished painting, but the way we're going to go about this video is we're going to also put in some interesting information in the beginning here. Just some, factual stuff that can really be helpful as you get better at your watercolor. So if you're an extreme beginner, you're just starting out, maybe your first couple months, it's a little rough going. You're just getting started. Understandable. But then after about 6 months or a year, you're going to actually start to really make some progress. And the thing is, I wanted to just mention this one tidbit of information that'll really be helpful for you is when you're creating your watercolors, you're going to want to pick up some mats at your local hobby shop, or you can get them online or at your local art stores. Maybe you get like 4 or 5 different mats. So you're going to want to get mats like this. 4 or 5 different sizes, maybe the sizes you like to work in, okay? And what you do is when you're creating your paintings, you're going to want to put this mat on your watercolor paper first and trace the window very, very lightly, something like this. So if you have your watercolor paper here, pretend this is your watercolor paper. Then you take your mat, you put it down like so, and you take a very, very light pencil line, and you just make a rectangle where your mat window is. So you have the window of your mat like so, and these would be standard mats you would buy in the art store. And what happens is if you have that rectangle like this and then you create your painting within this rectangle, then you can take your mat and you can buy a pre-cut mat at the store, drop it over your painting, move it around a little bit, and then you have a perfectly sized painting for a mat, and then you can put it in a frame. All of these pre-cut mats fit into standard size frames. So what I'm saying is, I think all of us artists, we all do this. Sometimes we get excited. We just get a big piece of watercolor paper and we start painting. But a great thing you can do, get into the habit. It's just like a habit. You want to start to form these good habits as you're starting to get, started in watercolor, drawing and painting in watercolor. You start using these mats, and even if it's a small one like this, if you're going to do a smaller painting like this, you would start out with your mat, get your rectangle first like this, just with a light pencil line, like that. We could do it with maybe, you know, a marker, maybe a pen. Maybe I'll do it with a pen just so you can kind of see it a little better. So I'm going to try to find a pen over here. Maybe I'll find a darker pencil. Okay, let me get a pencil. So you would take your mat and do it very lightly. I'm doing it dark here so you can see what I'm describing. And this way, when you start to paint on your watercolor paper here, like so, you're going to make sure you draw your composition within this rectangle here. So this way, when you go and you can drop a mat on top of it and then put a frame on it, it's all ready to go. And then you can give it as a gift. You can put it up on your wall. Maybe there's a show in your local area. You're going to want to submit your painting to a local show. It'll all be ready to go for your matting and framing. Versus if you were just to draw and paint a painting, and then you go to put a mat on it, and you find that it's not fitting correctly, or you're losing a lot of good portions of your painting. That's how this can really alleviate all of that problem. So if you start out right in the beginning, if you're going to do a painting, right away, just drop a mat on it, whatever size painting you want to do. If you're going to do a larger painting, well, then maybe you're going to use a larger mat like this. Drop it on your watercolor paper and just do a light pencil line, super light pencil line, just so you know that you have to at least fill in that area or a little bit beyond that area, so you have some wiggle room. You know, you can move your mat around and then set it and then tape it and put your frame on top of it. I hope that makes sense. Basic idea is if you're not painting with a particular size window, you might lose some of your painting, or you might not have enough painting to fill the area, and you wind up short, and then you might have to cut a custom mat, and that it's very expensive. So to cut a custom mat, to have a frame shop or to have like a local, local art store cut for you a custom mat like this, that's very expensive. You want to avoid the cost. You want to actually start out right from the beginning when you're creating your watercolor paintings. Buy yourself 3 or 4, 5, 6, whatever, standard size mats like this. Have them right at your, readily available at your art table, wherever you're working at. So then whenever you're starting a painting, whatever size paper you have, take your mat, figure out what mat's going to work best for that size paper you have, drop it on there, do your light pencil sketch with your mat size, and this way you have to use that as your guide as to where you're going to put your subject matter inside that frame, inside that mat frame, so that you have it, so that you can you can go out and buy a standard mat like this at the art store, put it onto your painting, buy a standard frame at the art store if you want, and you're all set. You're ready to go. You can mat and frame your paintings right from a hobby store or your local art stores, your big box stores, or even online. You can order standard size mats and frames, and you won't be struggling with trying to cut and lose some of your painting by cropping it down too much. I hope I'm not giving you too much information, but suffice to say, this is a really big thing. If you're going to start to get to the point where you're gifting your artwork and your paintings, or you're going to hang them up in your own house, or you're going to put them into shows or galleries, or start to put them up for sale, your paintings, remember, if you can just get your standard 5 or 6 different mats like this, and then whenever you start a new painting, whether it's a smaller painting or whether it's a larger painting like this or even larger, if you get the standard size mat at the art store, the hobby shop first, or online first, the standard size, then you just simply trace that rectangle, and then when you create your painting, you just make sure you're filling up that whole rectangle you just traced. So we'll do it on this painting right here, just so we have an idea. So let's do that. Now you wouldn't do it as dark as I'm doing, because I'm doing it dark so you can see it on this camera, on this video. I'm doing this tutorial for you so you can actually see what I'm doing here. But at home, you wouldn't do it this dark with dark pencil. I'm using a dark B, 6B pencil. You'd want to use a really light office pencil and just barely make a mark on your paper, just so you know that you have to fill up that rectangle at least to that light pencil line, and that's it. Then You know, you can go a little bit beyond that line, that rectangle. You can go beyond this and paint beyond it, but you won't want to be coming up short of that. You want to make sure you paint at least to the pencil line or beyond, if that makes sense. I do this myself. A lot of times I just grab paper and start painting, and I don't do the mat first, so I'm getting more into the habit of doing that. It's really helpful. So let's do a painting here, just a quick painting to kind of get into the mood of things. And so let's take our pencil and pens and we'll get started here. Maybe we'll just do a simple, maybe a street scene today. So let's kind of, maybe we'll do some buildings, just some kind of interesting building shapes like so. Maybe some trees. And then maybe another building over here. So I'm just going to do some building shapes. Buildings, some trees, some more buildings over here. We'll do a street scene. And then over here, let's do some canopies maybe. So we have some canopies here. Like this. So maybe there's some really interesting shopping stores and things like that. People going here and there. And then there's maybe some cafes along here with some umbrellas. So we'll have some cafes over here along the street. And there's some tables. We'll make just indications and marks on the paper of where we sort of are going to find our interesting information. So we're going to have maybe a first floor here, and then this will go over like so. We'll have a little bit of a like that. So we're going to have, and then we're going to have a building over here. Some more. We'll have some windows here, so we'll put some windows here. I'm just sketching out some rough ideas. We're just going to have fun here and do a quick rendition of maybe a street scene, just a fun street scene. And then we have our street here, and then we're going to have some maybe we'll have some a crosswalk over here, like so. And then maybe we'll have some lights here in the distance, like that. And then we're going to have another maybe light over here, a light there, and then maybe we'll have a power pole over here with some lines. We'll have some power poles over here going down the street. We're going to have some trees. So we're just going to keep this real loose, real fun. We'll do some figures in here, and we're going to keep this real loose and easy going. This painting is just going to be a fun street scene, not too critical with, you know, details and things like that. We're just going to kind of try to get the basic idea of it. So you can kind of see the basic idea of a building over here on the left. Over here, some more windows. And then a canopy over here with some stores and a cafe. Underneath the canopies here, some storefronts and cafes. We'll have people. We'll put some figures in here, and that's it. We'll have a really wonderful looking painting here. So let's take a quick break. So hopefully I'm bringing you a lot of content here, a lot of good tidbits of information. I try to bring the whole enchilada for you, so I just don't give you some information. I try to give you all the information. And again, the main thing that we did when we started here on this video, again, remember, is get yourself those mats. It's a very little bit of an investment. It's a very little upfront investment as an artist, as a watercolor artist. And if you get these mats, and then when you drop them on your paper and you just do that light line, then you know that when you create your painting, as long as you're within those lines, that rectangle, and at least in those lines, you can paint beyond them, right? You can kind of paint beyond those lines. It's okay. And you're only making a very light line. I made a dark line here so you can see it. But then at least when you go and you say, oh, this came out great, I want to mat and frame this, it's all ready to go. You just take your mat, you drop it on. If you paint a little bit beyond the pencil lines, then you can move your mat around a little bit too. You'll have a little more extra room to move your mat around and kind of find the real perfect sweet spot you want on your painting, and then you're good. Or if you want, if you paint it right to your rectangle here, and then you think, oh, I had a problem on one of the sections of my painting. Well, maybe you can take this and then take a smaller mat and you can crop the rest of your painting. So you might say, oh, I just want to key in on this one spot on my painting here. This came out the best, this one location here on my painting. That's fine. You can cut the rest of your painting out and throw it away and just leave one spot that came out really, really good. So if you can imagine, this type of thinking when you're doing your watercolors can really be a big benefit. So sometimes you'll create a painting and there's only going to be maybe a small section that came out just perfect that you like. And if that's the case, then you just get a small mat like so, or, either, something this size or a little smaller, and you just mat and then trim around the rest of it and put this one in the frame, just this one section of the painting that came out just perfect. So you always remember, you try to crop your paintings, much like a photographer. Photographers, a lot of times, they take pictures, they take a wide array of subject matter at one time, and then they might go in and they might say, this is the perfect spot of the photograph, and they take that photograph and they crop it and they cut the rest of it out, throw it away, and they leave that one section that looks just perfect the way they like it. So you're just kind of trying to think like you're a photographer. You're cropping things to kind of like highlight the best area of your painting if you have to. Maybe the whole painting turned out great. You don't have to worry about it. And you can use your full-size mat like so. That's your goal. Your goal is to have your whole painting turn out just right the way you like it. But if you had a problem on one side of your painting, no problem. You can also just crop it down, cut the rest of that painting away, leave it to the side, and then you just have yourself a smaller painting, but something that looks perfect within that mat size that you have. Okay, so this I learned many years ago, 10 years ago, I think I learned this sort of idea from someone else. I think I found it on my own, actually. I think I just found this out on my own, working along, doing my watercolors, but I wanted to pass that along to you because it's really a huge help if you want to start framing your paintings again, and putting them into frames, matting them, framing them, gifting them, putting them in shows, putting them up on your wall in your house, your kitchen, your living room, your bedrooms, whatever it is. Just a little more information, a little more flexibility you have as a watercolor artist to work with your art and, deal with some of the issues that do come up. Once in a while, you're going to create a large painting and half the painting or one side of that painting might not come out great. Well, that's okay. You can crop it down, make it smaller, make it like a portrait style painting versus a landscape style. So you're in control. You're the artist. Use these informational videos here that I'm doing to kind of inspire you to take some notes on it and make sure you kind of take action on it. And this way you'll be much happier as an artist. You'll have tools to use when you're navigating through your watercolor journey. Okay, so let me take a quick break and then we'll do just a quick glazing technique painting of a beautiful street scene here, and we'll see how it comes out, and we'll be right back. All right, we're getting started here. Let's get into the glazing technique here with our watercolor. We have our street scene roughed out here with some pencil. We used a 6B pencil to rough out our area of our buildings. A beautiful canopy here, some street areas here where there's some asphalt street, some cafes along here and stores with some umbrellas, and we have some lights along the street here, some communication and power poles and power lines. So we're just going to kind of get the whole feel of a street scene here doing the glazing technique, and we'll just kind of go through it really simply and straight, in a straightforward fashion. So on the extreme beginners, again, most of you are working with our standard Princeton Art and Brush Company synthetic brushes. So you can buy a 5 or 6 pack of these brushes with maybe 2 of the square brushes like this, 2 round brushes. There might be another 1 or 2 brushes in there. You have those, you're set. They're like for $10, you get like 5 or 6 brushes, but these Princeton and Art and Brush Company brushes are fantastic. I don't get paid for saying that. I'm just telling you, I researched over the years and bought a lot of brushes, and these work great. And then also too, Simmons, Simply Simmons number 6 round brush. I find this brush has lasted a long time. It's got a good point on it, and synthetic, so it's great for beginners. So if you're just starting out in watercolor, synthetic hair brushes are a little better because they don't fill up with as much water, which can cause you some problems in your paintings occasionally. So let's get started. Here's the palette. I already spritzed my palette with, this is the Prang Oval 16 palette, so I'm just going to wet the palette a little bit. We're going to leave some of these colors in here. We don't mind too much. A little bit of color here, like so. That's okay. We're going to mix new colors right on top of these. And again, we're going to have fun doing the glazing technique. So the first thing I'm going to do is just start wetting the sky with fresh, clean water. So let's get some water on the whole canvas here, the whole paper, just like this. Now you don't have to cover every bit of the paper with water. Just get some fresh, clean water throughout the whole painting, just so the water and color is going to flow across your paper nicely. Again, you don't have to cover every square inch of it. Just get some water a little bit here and there, everywhere, like this. It doesn't have to be everywhere. And I think that's pretty good. And then I'll add a little extra up top here on the sky area. So I'll add a little bit extra water just up here in the sky area, and we'll start to think about, okay, we'll let that be for a second. Let's mix up our colors. So let's go with our blue. We're going to go with the cerulean blue, maybe a little orange in there, just to make that a nice kind of blue with a little bit of, grayed down, just a little tiny bit with some orange. Okay, that's going to be our sky wash. Maybe a little more sky wash here, some French ultramarine blue, which I mixed into my palette. So there we have our cerulean blue here, a little bit of French ultramarine blue here, plenty of water, and then let's just start getting that on here. Just a real light wash. We don't want it to be dark at all. Just a light wash, and we'll put it right onto the buildings too. So you want to get that blue tint across your painting, like so. And you want to flow it right down into the buildings, like this. And just have fun. Just cover the whole area. That's what's fun about watercolor. You just get that water and paint on there and have a good time. And we're just doing basically a glazing, a base coat for our painting. So we have a good, nice color wash underneath the painting. And then we're going to go over with all our darks next. But that's next, so we're going to have to let this dry 100%. So you can think about either one, blow drying this wash off once you're done, like this here. This is pretty much finished. A little bit of that blue wash on everything. Or you can use a blow dryer, or you can let it dry naturally. If you let it dry naturally, it might take an hour or 2 or 3, depending. If you want to get it done and get it, start working again nice and quick, then you just start, do a blow dryer, a hair dryer, dry it off nice, quick, and then we'll get back in and do some more washes over the top. Our darker washes, our medium and dark washes on top of this. Okay, so this is the glazing technique. We get that light blue sky wash, and then we just bring it right on down through the buildings, the street, everywhere. Let it set. And again, either you blow dry this off and it takes 5 minutes or so, or if you let it dry a couple hours, 2-3 hours, it'll be really good and dry, and then you can go over the top with our next washes. So that's up to you. But I think I'm going to use the hair dryer next, and then we'll start up and do a second wash. Okay, so let's come right back now in just a few minutes. I'm going to use the dryer while I shut the camera off, and then when we come back, it'll already be dry, and we'll start doing our subsequent washes. Okay. Okay, so we're starting back up again. We're going to do our next wash. So we did our first glazing. I actually used a hair dryer to dry this painting off so I could actually, work a little faster, and then we could just keep working with the process here. But you could let this dry overnight or maybe 2-3 hours. It would be the same thing, really. It's a little better to let it naturally dry, but if blow drying is fine too. So what I'll do is I'm just doing this improvisational, so I don't have any photograph or anything that I'm working from. I'm just kind of doing this by feel, doing just like an improvisational street scene. So the next thing I'm going to do is say, okay, I have the really nice light wash over the whole painting. Let's start to do other washes over the top of this one, and let's use like middle tones. Let's use middle tones. Let's not, we have to start to darken it up a bit. So let's get some oranges and reds. So we're going to do maybe some red brick buildings. Maybe we're going to do some blue and purple too as well. Make some cool type, some browns in there too to kind of mellow out the colors. So, and some repeating colors in there. So we want to add some of that cerulean blue. I call that cerulean blue. It's pretty much the Prang Oval 16 blue that looks pretty much like, the lightest blue out of all the blues in the palette. So I take a little bit of that and put it into the purple mix too with some of the brown. So I want to get some of that blue which we used in the sky washes, and also some French ultramarine blue. I want to get that into the mix too. So we have some of that kind of, harmonizing the colors within our painting. So, but here the thing is, we have to go darker now. You can't make these washes light. You have to actually make these washes darker than the first wash, which was really, really light. So you can kind of see now I'm getting a good dark wash. Let's start over here. And we'll just start putting in some dark washes here. Like that. Like so. You can go right in and get some orange, mix in some colors as we go. And I think that looks good. So we're already starting to develop a good color scheme here, like that, like so. Then we're going to go a little lighter, maybe some blue for the color of the road, and then let's do our street, our crosswalk. So we'll do a crosswalk with the white lines there, and you can paint outside the lines there. And then we're just going to go right across with the street, like that, with the asphalt. And then add a little bit of warm to that too. We want to add some warm and cool. So I'm adding some of that red mix there, a little bit here and there. Okay, so we're using our middle washes right now. We're not doing the super dark ones yet. And the darkest darks are going to be up here. So those would be the darkest darks up there at the tops of the buildings where the shadows are. Okay, and then let's get some greens in here. Greens for some trees, gold and orange. Let's get some gold and orange and greens and just start getting those in here. And that's going to be over here. And again, splashing technique. Trees, we want to splash for our trees. And that covers a lot of ground. If you can imagine, if you can splash to make some of the leaves on your trees, then you're all set. You don't have to sit there and try to painstakingly create leaves. You just do some splashing, and that gives you the effect of some leaves. So we're going to do some trees there along the back behind this building over here on this section. And you can even do a little bit of finger painting. You can do a little finger tapping with your fingers to kind of blend in here, a little bit here and there. Maybe a little bit of some other splashing there, just a little bit, kind of blend things through. There we go. And we're going to do some of the same thing here. Let's get some more darker medium tones, right? So we're doing medium tones here. We're not doing super, super dark right now. We're just going with the mediums. Can you kind of see that? And we're using the same colors in the palette. We already mixed everything up, so you shouldn't be chewing your, biting your nails and worrying about what colors to mix. We mixed the colors already first. Does that make sense? We did that first. If you have to rewind the video a little bit, just to remember to get your colors mixed first. Let's kind of mix a little bit of red through there. That'll tie everything all together through here. Okay. And there we go. And we'll put a little bit of green in there too. Why not? Add a little bit of green here and there. Okay, and then we're going to do the same thing here. We're going to get some more. This is like that. You can let watercolor flow and mingle and mix along your painting. Okay. If you find you see a section where it starts to get a little wonky, or you have some problems, just lift up some paint. I think we should go with some green and blue, and let's do these green and blue. So we're going to do this, some green and blue awnings, like so. So we're going to start to do that, some stripes on our awnings here, like that. And then along the bottom of the awnings, those are going to be green all the way. So we're going to do this all the way across, like that. There we go. Okay, so we have some good medium tones throughout our painting now. And again, I'm going to add some of that green. If you can, try to add it to your painting as you go. But I wouldn't go into your washes once you put them on. That's the only thing with watercolor painting. One of the major things you'll learn in watercolor that takes time to learn, and it's only through experience and time. You only have so much time that you can put additional washes over the top of wet watercolor paper. So here we happen to be using Fabriano paper, which gives me more time to work on my paper. So here I can add more paint to my washes that are slowly drying underneath, because I'm using really, really high quality paper. If you're using maybe some student grade paper, you won't have as much time to work and put extra colors over the top of your washes as you're working. But that only comes with time. Don't get frustrated with it, or just try to work with what you have. And then you can always blot up a little bit with your tissue just to get some variation if you want here and there. And that looks pretty good. Now, what I can do is, since we have this really looking good, all the medium tones, now we're going to be left to do the darks. And what's good about painting the darks is you can just go in and start doing them right away, because they're so thick and rich. It's not going to give you a problem when you're adding them in. Okay, so let's start doing our darks. Let's get in our blue, purple, red, brown. Let's get some really beautiful darks. Let's do some beautiful darks in here. Under here, so we're going to do some, and we're just going to do underneath these canopies here. And You can kind of see how I'm blending this all in. And let's keep working with these darks, but let's also get some oranges too. So let's kind of start mixing in some, we're going over the tops of the umbrellas with our super, super dark mixes here, which is 0 water, mostly straight paint. So always remember that, straight paint, almost 0 water at all, because you're just trying to get in the darks here. And there we have it. We're starting to get the umbrellas, underneath the umbrellas, like this. And then we can go in and get some more blue, like this. And then you can just kind of have fun, and you can kind of just get in any old thing. Pretend you're seeing some things, some figures. We'll put in some figures too next. Okay. Then what we'll do is I'm going to add a little bit of this Viridian green here. And the only thing is, when you add Viridian green like this, make sure you have to be careful with it, because it kind of, it's going to flow around a little bit, but I think it looks really good. Like that. Okay, that looks pretty good. And that gives us a little more color, and then we can start doing our our umbrellas there. There we go. All right, so wow, we're looking good here. So the next thing, let's start. Okay, this is still damp. We're gonna have to let this dry. So at this point, please remember, try to let things dry as you're working. Please try to let things dry as you're working. And if you have a problem where you want to try to lift up some paint, take a paper towel, take a small piece of paper towel, maybe you cut a piece of paper towel, like a square piece like this, fold it up into a square, and fold it really good and crease it, make it tight, and then you can actually, you can make some corrections. If paint starts to bleed into other areas like it did on us there, no problem. Just like that. You can kind of repair some sections like that. You can lift up a couple areas here too, like that. And then you can also do the same thing if you take your paper towel and you fold it up again. You can make a little area of light along the top, like that. And I think that looks better. Now we have that light across the top of the canopy, and then it's a little darker on the bottom portion of the canopy that kind of hangs straight down, like that ribbon at the bottom of the canopy. So you can kind of see how you can use a little bit of paper towel once in a while to blot up a little bit of paint, kind of, do it as you feel fit, you see fit. But I'm glad you're here with me here painting, and we're having a great time. We're in the Extreme Beginner series too, which means this painting is totally doable for if you're just starting out in watercolor. You can do this. This is not really tremendously difficult. You get your sketch in first, which is kind of like straightforward. We just kind of hashed in our buildings and some trees and a little bit of the umbrellas and some street crosswalk lines. And then right away we went in and did our first glazing, let it dry 100%. That's the key. 100% let that first wash dry. Then we went over on the top and started putting in our medium to dark washes. And now we're starting to work in lastly with our darkest dark washes, but we have to be careful with that too. So instead of continuing and maybe running into more problems with having to use a lot of the paper towel and tissues and blotting, you can do that as you go. Maybe that's something you want to investigate. But for the most part, I'm going to let this dry now and let it dry a lot, pretty much for half an hour to an hour. I'm going to have some dinner maybe, and I'll come back after dinner, and then I'll finish up with the darkest darks, and we'll do some figures, and you'll see how beautiful this looks, how wonderful this looks. So let's come back in just a little while. Once this all dries, you can kind of see this is all still wet through here. This is all damp up here. This is still damp over here. We want to let that all dry 100% now. Let's not get over zealous on trying to finish this painting and then have problems with washes looking like they're kind of, getting a little bit out of control, blossoming, making those cauliflower type blossoms and blooms and things like that. Watercolor can get a little bit problematic with washes kind of making funny marks on your paper, your watercolor paper in your painting. So let's just be smart and say let it dry. And once it dries, when we come back now, you'll see we can finish up the painting 100% and it's going to look fantastic, okay? And I always mention too, if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. It's on the right hand, the button of the subscribe button's right here on the right hand side below, on the right hand side. You click subscribe. All that does is just, you won't lose me. You'll find me the next time you open up YouTube. You'll see my video at the top of your YouTube page saying Chris made another video. I'm making videos all the time, every week, every month. Year after year, I'm here all the time making videos, so please subscribe. This way you can kind of follow along with me. If you want to paint watercolors, you're at the perfect place. We cover all the methods and techniques of watercolor right here on my channel. We cover drawing, which is the foundation of your watercolor painting, be able to render a good, solid pencil drawing. And then once you're completed with that, then you're going in and you're using either the glazing technique or the alla prima technique. I cover both all the time on my channel, so as long as you're watching week after week and following here all the time, you'll learn both of those techniques and you'll be able to use them interchangeably as you go. This one, we're doing the glazing technique on this painting, and you're already seeing how good it looks like that, all the colors blending together. And we'll finish up, and you'll see how those darkest darks and a few maybe highlights here and there we might do at the very, very end will kind of just complete the painting, make it look absolutely fantastic. So we'll be right back. All right, we're getting back to our painting now. We've let this dry 99%. Everything is 99% dry now on our second glazing, our second wash. So we did our first light wash, we did our second glazing, which was mostly middle tones, getting toward the darker tonal values. And then we did some darks. We started with some darks here, but we noticed that we needed to kind of let this dry a little more before we keep working. And that's the key. Knowing when to let the painting dry so you can go back in again and start working where you're not going to have too much of a problem with losing control of your washes. So we're now at a great spot. We're going to finish up the painting. So we have a couple square brushes here. So I'd like to use those for the windows here and there. So let's use those for windows. Maybe over here too we'll have a few windows. And we might have to mix up a little bit of Chinese white to get some windows. I think we'll use we'll use darks over here for windows, but we'll work it out as we go. So I'll start to work now with these two brushes, the two Princeton Art and Brush Company synthetic square brushes. And I'll start out with some wash here. Now here, this is pretty light, so if we go over with a medium wash, this should be fine. And we add a little red in there, so you can change around the washes, get some orange in there. Like this, so we're going to get some, maybe some darker darks, French ultramarine blue, darker brown there. Maybe we can add a little dark up there on top. purple. Just to get some darks up there. Like that. We're painting into the light, so the sunlight is coming from the behind all these trees and the buildings, and the sunlight's coming this way. So we pretty much have a pretty easy time. So we'll do some more windows over here. And these are real simple when you put the windows in. We're just using this square brush here. Then you can add a little darker darks up on top of the windows. So I'll just use the corner of the brush. And that just gives us a feeling of light bouncing around the painting. And let's use our smaller brush now. Our smaller square brush here. Let's get some more darks here. And we'll use some oranges, reds, brown, blue, purple, anything. And let's just do some real loose windows here. Like that. Just like this. And again, we're going to do these loosely like this, just like that, suggestive like this. We don't want to make a big deal of it, just try to get some rectangular shapes here using some darker darks. We don't want to go light. Darker darks is better, and then just like that. Like that. And then we can use a little more darks up here along the tops of the buildings, the cornice areas of the rooftops, like that. Then I might make a little bit of a line here where this one building starts and another one ends, just to give a little bit of a, like a, you know, a break in the action there between the two buildings. Maybe a couple splashes of paint. So I'll just pick up some any old wash out of the palette and just do some splashing to give some texture to that. A couple of taps with the finger. Just like that. Okay, that looks good. And we'll make a little bit of a street, feeling of the levelness of the street here across this way. So I'm just going to try to get that level line going across here, all the way across like this. Just a little bit over here. Not overstate it, but you know, want to make sure we like that. We could interrupt that line a little bit with a little bit of blotting, just like that. Maybe it's coming this way a little bit. Maybe we can rethink this and say, oh, maybe that line is coming this way. Looks better that way. Like that. So instead of going straight across, I'm making this line over here angle this way a little bit. Can you see that? That's all. Just to have a little more angular lines so that we feel like the street's going on an angle this way. And this street here is going so across this way. All right, you can kind of see we have a lot done so far. Looks really good. We're going to have a little shadow under here. At the cornice over here of this building. And there's some more shadowing up here too. So let's get in some shadowing just to, like that maybe. Maybe this one here we can just lighten up. That's probably going to get covered with the matte. But we continue to work on some details now. I would say the next thing we can do would be let's start getting some figures in here. Let's do maybe like maybe a male figure, like a guy in a suit or something. He's walking across the street here. One thing for sure is we're going to want to keep all of our the heads of our figures all the same level. So let's say we're going to keep the heads of all of our figures. We're going to make maybe 5 or 6 figures here. Let's make the heads of our figures about right underneath the umbrella height. So the umbrellas here along this street scene, we're going to make the heads just a little bit below those. And that will kind of give us a good feel for the figures being the proper height where you can walk under the umbrella and maybe sit down and have a drink or a coffee, you know, at a cafe, have some lunch, some dinner, some breakfast, you know, whatever. But we're going to want to have that feel of proper proportions for the figures. And the great way to do that is just make sure our heads are all the same height. So the heads are going to start out here. Let's maybe start out with one, just so we get a start here and say, okay, let's orange and red for the face. So we'll do some heads first with maybe a face, and we'll dry off our brush a little bit. We're going to get some red and orange, maybe a little yellow. Dry off the brush a little bit, and then we'll just make a small dot here. That'll be our first head. Maybe another one here, like that. So there we go. We're going to start out there with a few figures. Let's make their clothing straight paint, no water. Brown, French ultramarine blue, purple, maybe a little bit of red, purple, okay. Maybe a touch of black. And then we're going to do that. We're going to make some, I'll dry off, or, you know, I'll take some of that paint off the brush with a tissue so we don't have too much on the brush, too much paint. And there we go. And then we're going to do a couple figures. Like that. And we'll make them a little larger. The body's a little larger. Like that. Okay, so we have a couple figures there. And then maybe let's make some blue. Maybe we'll have some blue for the next figure here. This figure here is going to be a little bit larger. Maybe this will be a female figure. And then we'll do the red just for the heads. We're going to keep it real simple. So we'll have a red for the face, the head, and then we have the feet. Okay, so we have a couple figures over here, maybe with some suits, maybe a couple business people having lunch. And then a little bit of shadow maybe coming forward here. And the same thing here, we'll have a little bit of shadow coming forward here like this. Not too much, just a little bit. And we're going to have a larger figure. Let's go with a little bit larger figure here. Let's keep the heads the same. So let's start off with the head. Start off with the head of the figure and say, okay, we're going to keep the heads the same height. This one here is going to be like this, but larger, because we're going to make this figure closer to us. So there we go. Our figure is closer to us here, and then we'll make the shoulders larger, like so. And maybe this figure has a briefcase or a bag here, like so, like that. Okay. And then I'll put a little dark in the center of this female figure with the dress. Just a little bit of dark on the center so that the dress looks kind of like it's lit from the light. Like so. Okay. This figure is coming towards us. So he has, see his hands a little bit. We're going to do some highlighting on these, and then maybe one more. Let's do maybe a green figure here. Maybe there's a figure with some green. Maybe another. Maybe orange and green. A figure there. They look a little better darker, the figures. But you can go with anything, color-wise. Just some legs, like that. And I think that's good. We have some figures now, maybe a few figures sitting down. So we'll have some figures sitting down at the tables over here, and really just suggestive, very lightly over here. So we have some light and some tables. And you could just put a couple, maybe some feeling of some tables and some chairs. Literally just little dots and dashes and bits of things like that, just to, and a little bit of shadowing too. So these have shadows coming forward a little bit. And I think that looks fine. Now, let's take a break. We've done quite a bit of some detail here. So when you're doing details, I would have to say it's, it's not easy. You have to take your time and be careful about things. So that's what I've done here. I've tried to be really careful with my figures. And what I'll do is next, I will, maybe I will make this figure, yeah, this figure is going towards us, like this. So I'm going to make that. Okay. Okay, looks good. So we're having fun. That's the main thing. We're having a lot of fun here. Let's continue, but we have to take a break. I'm taking a break because we did a lot of detail work here. The last 15, 20 minutes, we've been doing all these figures, a lot of details. We're doing the figures. We're doing some shadowing for the figures, coming forward like this on the figures. Okay, so this way we're careful. With what we're doing. There we go. Okay, now let this dry for about 15, 20 minutes, come back, and what we'll do is we'll do the lights, some power lines, maybe a few details along the rooftops, and I think we'll have it wrapped up at this point. So it's really getting there. We just have to do a few more details with some of the lights. Maybe we'll do maybe a couple signs, street signs over here along this area here. But I think this is pretty much really looking fine. And again, one of the most critical things we talked about at the beginning is when we start out, we want to have our rectangle planned out so that we could put a mat over top like this. See how great that looks? So you're ready to frame. If you paint a painting like this and you have your pencil line on your paper like we just did here, you can drop your mat over it, perfect, and then you put a frame around it and you're all set. If a section doesn't come out that great, well then you can always make it a smaller painting like this and do that. So it's up to you. You're the artist. I'm hoping you'll utilize this method of starting out with your mat first to get your size of your frame and your mat size, and then you'll be good to go. Okay, we'll be right back and we'll finish up the details here, okay? Okay, let's come back in a second. All right, it's been a marathon here. It's been a journey, but we're actually going to continue on here and finish up the details on this painting, and I think you can kind of see everything is pretty smooth going through here. Everything is kind of all nicely woven together, like, you know, harmonized together. The colors, the washes. We have some beautiful light in the sky. We have beautiful middle and dark tonal values throughout the rest of the painting. So let's continue. Let's just actually get the details in, the final bits of details that we need to get this a completed painting. So the thing I think we'll do first is we'll use a needlepoint brush here, and we'll use some brown, some black, some brown, some French ultramarine blue. Let's make this thick paint. Thick paint. Not much, no water, basically just straight paint. And then we're going to start doing some light posts here. Let's do some light posts. So I'm going to go over here, keep my hand resting on the paper, and then just sort of go down like this, like that, and then do a nice swoop like that, and a little light fixture there on top. Then let's do the communication pole here. We'll come right down straight. We'll add maybe some white paint. We'll do some lights, some light paints too for highlights. So now we're going to do some fine details here. Okay, then we're going to take some more same colors here, just to mix the brown, touch of black, French ultramarine blue, a little bit of red, cadmium red. If you have to, you can take a little bit of the paint off the brush so you don't have too much on there, and then you can do some of the wires, the communication wires and power wires like that. Just a few here and there, maybe a couple over here, like that. Just a few indications. Maybe another power pole over here, like this, over here. Like that. Just a couple more. Couple final details, another light over here. Like that. Another light post there. So we're just doing some final details here. And okay. Now we can do some couple of wires over there, and let's do some maybe some details along this parapet up here, parapet wall. Just some interesting things here. Maybe just a couple indications of some things going on. Kind of makes it look interesting to have some breaks in the this straight line of the cornice of the building. So if you can just add a few little lines and things, you know, a couple little dots, dashes, things like that along this building line here, you're going to have a little more interesting details there. And what else can we do here? Maybe a little detail along the underside of this here. Just a quick breeze across the page here, like so. And what else can we do here? That looks pretty good. Maybe a couple indications of some details here too as well. Just something. And what else can we do? We have our figures over here. I think we need to add a little more orangey red for maybe some of the faces here. So I just want to get a couple of those orangey red colors for some of the. You can also add in some different colors. These paints are a little bit more opaque and a little more difficult, but we can get a little bit of maybe a blue shirt there a little bit. And if it doesn't look good, you can blot it up, no big deal. All right, so we have some really good details. Let's mix up a little bit of titanium white. The key here now is, if you're going to mix up a little bit of titanium white, take a paper towel, clean out a spot on your palette so there's no other paint. You want to clean out a nice clean spot on your palette like so. Then you put on some titanium white like that. Okay, and then you add a touch of orange and yellow over here on the side, like so. You want to make this a little bit warm. You want to make a yellow ochre kind of titanium white. You don't want to have it straight white. You want to mix in a little bit of that golden color. That makes it like a warm light color. Like that. That makes a huge difference. Then you take it, you get some white on your needlepoint brush. You take off a touch of the paint on a tissue just so you don't have too much on there. And then we're going to do some highlights on these figures. And this you'll see really, oh, it just makes it look great. Look at that. Does that not look fantastic? And we'll do the same thing here. Some highlights on the heads here and the shoulders. And that just creates that beautiful light in the picture of the figures. The sunlight catching the tops of their heads and their shoulders just makes it all the difference in the world between a kind of a good painting to like a greater painting. So let's remember these little details at the end here, because it's really, you want to capture these type of details that'll really make it, you know, much better, your painting. Now we'll take this same white and we'll use some of the blue and kind of like the grayish mixture over here. So now we're just going to mix like just a little bit of a lighter tone, but not necessarily that bright white that we use there. We dry off a little bit here, and then we could do a little bit of things on the windows here, some sashes on the windows, so that you just quickly, you get those in, quick like that. And you can kind of, you know, just kind of take a few and just something there, a little bit, something there to make it look a little more exciting. And then here I might clean up this edge here with a little bit of that white, like this, and make that awning a little better, right? That looks better. And then if I need to, I also come over here like that. You can also fix up your awnings. If your awnings kind of, you lost control of some washes over here, you could take that white and just touch up a few spots. And then you can also add some writing over here. So I think we'll do some like that. And maybe a little more writing over here too. And then you can even describe these umbrellas a little better too, like that. Like that. Doesn't that look better? If you you add a little bit of that white, makes it look a little better, more realistic with the umbrellas on the cafes and storefronts here, restaurant. You can even do a little more over here and just do a little. You can even do a little wavy kind of thing like this. Like that, just to give it a little more pizzazz. And a little bit over here too, along the top. Just like that. So right away you're starting to, and then you can also come over here and just add a little bits of light bouncing off these light poles here, and the communication poles, and the power poles. Just like that. And what that does is, it just feels like there's light bouncing around in your painting, which is natural, because that's what happens when there's light, sunlight bouncing around in a nice sunny day like this here at this scene. You're going to see little bits of light here and there, kind of glimmering and shimmering along different things, like the light poles and the communication poles and all these things over here too. And stuff like this too. You could do some lines like that. You could do just a couple lines here. Some, you know, you have your grids in your windows, the grid patterns in the windows. You could do those too. Just a few here and there. Just a couple makes it look a little more interesting. And what else do we have? I think that's good. If we wanted to, we could add a couple of branches for the trees over here, just to give it a little, just to give that a little detail. And that sort of really helps you to kind of see that there's some branches and trunks of trees and things over here. Like that. That kind of helps a little bit. Helps to describe those trees a little bit more over here. Just a tiny bit. And I think we're complete here. The only thing I thought I could do is maybe add a little bit of a darker wash on this roadway here, on the sort of to match this here. See how this is a little darker than this? I think we need to add a darker wash here, so that is not a problem. We can just take these original washes that we created and make sure I mix up some good colors in there, blues and French ultramarine blue, cerulean type blue. We'll mix in the purples, and I think that's pretty good. And then I'm just going to kind of do this. Just scrub on some paint, not everywhere. Just like this. Rinse, get some water on my brush. And then sort of try to just tie it in over here with the road. Like this. So I'm just trying to see if I can get this a little darker, which I think looks better, like that. And then a splash on a little bit of water, maybe a little bit of green. Some of that green from the awnings. So if we can mix a little bit of that green color, that really rings true here because you have those green awnings. And then maybe a little more detail along here too. Maybe a little bit of a line here. Maybe there's some bolts and things that hold the canopy onto the building, so we can do that too. So as you can see, we just try to work details until we say, I think it's good. I think that looks good. Maybe some details around the windows a little more. I think that could be a little better. Some details around the windows, like so. Like a header over the windows, maybe like a stone ornament over the top, ornamentation. Like that, and then like this. Maybe a sill under there, like so. Just little indications of these things will really make everything look a little better. And then maybe a little darker shadowing under those sills there, like that. And then the same thing over here, some darker sills under there, like so. Maybe a couple of just some indications of some ornamentation again on the, maybe a little splashing, just to give it some texture. You can just tap on your splashes just to give some texture to everything. But I think we've definitely, that's it. That's about all the details we really want to do. Maybe we could do a couple of seagulls. So we just use some of the kind of a medium color. We don't want to go too dark and make it too, but we could do a couple seagulls here. So we just want a couple here and there. And we just try to make them all different ways. We don't want to have them all symmetrical. We want to try to keep them like this. Maybe one like this here. That's all. And if one doesn't come out good, you can maybe try to scrub it off. You can take a little bit of paper towel, a damp paper towel sometimes. That's all you need, a damp paper towel. And you can kind of, if you have a seagull or two that don't come out good, you can actually scrub them right off. See how those disappeared like that quick? Even this one didn't come out so great. You can actually scrub them right off like that. And then we'll do maybe one more here. There we go. Perfect. So there you go. You can sometimes make a few corrections. They don't always go well all the time, but this one, it happens to work well. I just tried it and it did happen to. I think this paint is very forgiving. Your Oval 16 paint sets, when you're working with these type of paints, they're a little more forgiving. They don't seep down into the paper as much, I don't think. I've kind of noticed that about these paints. So as an extreme beginner, when you're doing paintings like this, you actually have a little more flexibility with making some corrections and things like that. So you can kind of see how I just dampened up a piece of paper towel and I can just lift up details like that. I could have probably taken out any of these type light posts or power lines or whatever with some damp paper. If I didn't do a great job of it, I could have blotted those out quick, scrubbed them off, and then let that dry, the paper dry 100%, and then come back in and do it again if I had to. So you do have more flexibility with doing some corrections with your Oval 16 paints. And I am using good paper. This is Fabriano Artistico extra white paper, rough grain. And again, we're at the final part of our painting. And we did all of our details. So we're pretty much, this is 100% good. And then what we'll do is we'll come back again within the next couple of weeks or so, and we'll do another painting similar to this, a glazing technique painting. Maybe we'll do it like a landscape or maybe a seascape or something like that, but we're going to continue to do these techniques over and over and over again so you get the feel for them and you're able to be really comfortable with them. So this is the glazing technique from, you know, the whole kit and caboodle from start to finish. If you want to do this painting, do it 2 or 3 different times. Keep watching it over and over again. If you do this same painting 2 or 3 times, you'll have much more mastery over doing this technique, especially if you're doing the same painting, because it'll be easier and you won't be as much having a difficult time maybe with all of the different changes that happen throughout the whole painting. But I'm sure you're going to do a good job. You're the artist. You're doing well. I'm sure you're all doing a fantastic job here, painting along, learning the glazing technique, learning how to just get those washes on, let them dry, get the next layering of washes on, let that dry, and then finally the last time we're kind of working here, we're just doing those final details, and you can kind of see how we did that too as well. So until we meet again, I thank you so much for coming by and painting along with me and all of us here. And again, the subscribe button here on the right hand side is just if you want to stay in touch with us and keep painting along with us here on this channel. It might be your first time here, and I just want to say thank you for coming by if it's your first time, and welcome. And feel free, if you click that subscribe button, you'll just make sure, you know, YouTube will just make sure that you're always seeing my newest and latest videos in your YouTube channel. When you open up your YouTube channel, you'll see my videos and the newest ones that I've been creating, so you can jump right in with us and work with us. Okay. All right. So we'll see you on the next painting, and happy painting, everybody.